God wrote, "I love you." He wrote it in the sky and on the earth and under the sea. He wrote his message everywhere, because God created everything in his world to reflect him like a mirror, to show us what he is like, to help us know him, to make our hearts sing. And God put it into words too and wrote it in a book called the Bible. Now some people think the Bible is a book of rules, telling you what you should and shouldn't do. The Bible certainly does have some rules in it. They show you how life works best. But the Bible isn't mainly about you and what you should be doing. It's about God and what he has done. Other people think the Bible is a book of heroes, showing you people you should copy. The Bible does have some heroes in it, but most of the people in the Bible aren't heroes at all. They make some big mistakes, sometimes on purpose. No, the Bible isn't a book of rules or a book of heroes. The Bible is most of all a story. It's an adventure story about a young hero who comes from a far country to win back his lost treasure. It's a love story about a brave prince who leaves his palace, his throne, everything, to rescue the one he loves. It's like the most wonderful of fairy tales that has come true in real life. You see, the best thing about this story is it's true. There are lots of stories in the Bible, but all the stories are telling one big story. The story of how God loves his children and comes to rescue them. It takes the whole Bible to tell this story, and at the centre of the story there is a baby. Every story in the Bible whispers his name. He is like the missing piece in a puzzle, the piece that makes all the other pieces fit together.
Everything was ready. The moment God had been waiting for was here, at last. But God was coming to help his people, just as he had promised in the beginning. But how would he come? What would he be like? What would he do? Mountains would have bowed down, seas would have roared, but the earth held its breath. And when no one was looking, in the darkness, he came.
There was a young girl who was engaged to a man named Joseph. One morning this girl was minding her own business when suddenly a great warrior of light appeared right there in her bedroom. He was Gabriel, and he was an angel, a special messenger from heaven. When she saw the tall shining man standing there, Mary was frightened. "You don't need to be scared," Gabriel said. "God is very happy with you. You're going to have a baby, a little boy. You will call him Jesus. He is God's own son. He's the one. He's the rescuer."
The God who flung planets into space and kept them whirling around and around. The God who made the universe with just a word. The one who could do anything at all, was making himself small and coming down as a baby. Wait, God was sending a baby to rescue the world?
"But it's too wonderful," Mary said, and felt her heart beating hard. "How can it be true?" "Is anything too wonderful for God?" Gabriel asked. So Mary trusted God more than what her eyes could see, and she believed. "I am God's servant," she said. "Whatever God says, I will do." Sure enough, it was just as the angel had said. 9 months later, Mary was almost ready to have her baby. Now Mary and Joseph had to take a trip to Bethlehem, the town King David was from. But when they reached the little town, they found every room was full. They couldn't find anywhere except an old tumble-down stable. And there, in the stable, in the quiet of the night, God gave the world his wonderful gift. The baby that would change the world was born, his baby son. Mary and Joseph wrapped him up to keep him warm. They made a soft bed of straw and used the animal's feeding trough as his cradle. And they gazed in wonder at God's great gift, wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger.
Mary and Joseph named him Jesus, Emmanuel, which means God has come to live with us, because of course he has. That same night, in amongst all the other stars, suddenly a bright new star appeared. Of all the stars in the dark vaulted heavens, this one shone clearer. It blazed in the night and made the other stars look pale beside it. God put it there when his baby son was born, to be a spotlight shining on him, lighting up the darkness, showing people the way to him. You see, God was like a new daddy. He couldn't keep the good news to himself. He had been waiting all these long years for this moment, and now he wanted to tell everyone.
That night, some shepherds were out in the open fields warming themselves by a campfire. The olive trees rustled. What was that? A wing beat? They looked, and there in front of them was a huge warrior of light, blazing in the darkness. "Don't be afraid of me," the bright shining man said. "I haven't come to hurt you. I've come to bring you happy news for everyone, everywhere. Today, in David's town, in Bethlehem, God's Son has been born. You can go and see him. He is sleeping in a manger." The shepherds raced to Bethlehem. At last they reached a tumble-down stable. They caught their breath. Then quietly they tiptoed inside.
They had heard about this promised child, and now he was here, the maker of the stars, a baby sleeping. This baby would be like that bright star shining in the sky that night, a light to light up the whole world, chasing away the darkness, helping people to see. And the darker the night got, the brighter the star would shine. Far away in the east, some clever men saw the very same star that we've just heard about, the star that God had put in the sky when Jesus was born. They knew it was a sign. A baby king had been born.
"He's here," they shouted. "He's here." At dawn, they packed up their belongings and wrapped gifts for the baby. They brought their most precious treasures of all, frankincense, gold, and myrrh, special, sparkly, lovely-smelling, gleaming things, just right for a king. Then they set off until at last they reached Jerusalem. Jerusalem was by far the most important city for miles around, and as anyone can tell you, that's where a palace would be, and kings are born in palaces. So that's where they went. But they were in for a surprise. They went to see King Herod. Surely he'd know where this baby was. But in fact, he didn't. He didn't like the sound of a new king. It made him cross. He didn't want anyone to be king except him. But Herod's advisor told the wise men what was written in their book, what God had said about the baby king. "Go to Bethlehem. That's where you'll find him." Suddenly, the star they had seen in the east started moving again, showing them the way. So the wise men followed the star out of the big city, along the road, into the little town of Bethlehem. They followed the star through the streets of Bethlehem until it stopped right over a little house. But wait, it wasn't a palace, and there weren't any guards, or servants, or trumpets, or red carpets, or anything. Did they get it wrong? Or was this what God meant? Sure enough, in that little house, there, sitting on his mother's knee, they found him, the baby king. The wise men knelt before the little king and gave him their sparkling treasures. The journey that had begun so many centuries before had led the wise men here, to a little house, to a little child, to the king God had promised David all those years before. But this child was a new kind of king. Though he was the Prince of Heaven, he had become poor. Though he was the mighty God, he had become a helpless baby. This king hadn't come to be the boss, he had come to be a servant.
There are lots of stories in the Bible, but all the stories are telling one big story. The story of how God loves his children and comes to rescue them. It takes the whole Bible to tell this story, and at the centre of the story, there is a baby. Every story in the Bible whispers his name. He is like the missing piece in a puzzle, the piece that makes all the other pieces fit together.